Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Brent Toderian. I'm a city planner and have been a city planner for over 27 years. I'm here with you virtually tonight because I had very much wanted to attend the public hearing for the intended OCP amendment and rezoning or downzoning of 1310 Johnston Road. I had made special efforts to be able to attend the last public hearing schedule, but once it was rescheduled, unfortunately, I just wasn't able to physically participate. So we are doing it this way, and I regret that, as I very much was looking forward to sharing not only my information with you, but to answer what I expect would be your many questions about what I'm about to say and share. I have been a city planner for over 27 years, including almost 6 years as Vancouver's chief planner, almost 6 years as one of the top planners in the city of Calgary. In both roles, essentially being responsible for and overseeing the complex negotiations around development. So a lot of familiarity with the kind of development tensions and choices that cities make. In case you think I've spent too much time working for big cities, though, to be candid, I have spent about 15 years in the private sector, and I suspect I've worked for close to 100 cities of a similar scale and size and nature to White Rock. So I'm certainly familiar with the kind of issues that your city is facing, particularly development pressures and what have you. I have an unusual engagement in terms of how I get involved with projects. I do most of my work for city halls, for chief planners and mayors and members of council and city managers. I occasionally will take on involvement in a project on a development, but frankly, I'm extremely selective and careful with the kinds of projects that I get involved with. And the way I do my work is like this. If a developer approaches me hoping I will be willing to take part in their process or give them advice, my first process is to review everything, all the information I can, all the information available, and conclude what my position would be if I were the chief planner of the municipality that's involved. And as you can imagine, that actually leads to me giving bad news to many clients, many developers after I've done that initial review, because in many cases I actually conclude that I agree with the planning department or I agree with the city council or what have you. I share my observations with those clients, but essentially we part ways at that point, because I'm not a developer mouthpiece, I'm not a hired gun. And I have a reputation that I fight to preserve to make sure that my primary or main focus is always on defending the public interest as I understand it. So it is with that context that I find myself involved with this particular situation in White Rock. When I was approached by the property owners here, and I have to say, they are very different than most developers that contact me. I equate them more as small business people or investors. When they first approached me and I looked at all the information, I was able to conclude that this is a case where not only do I support their concerns with regard to the position being, or the process being undertaken at City Hall, but that I would be prepared to share my assessment, my information with you and the public here tonight at the public hearing, and also online and what have you. I conducted my assessment with two key parts. The first part was about how this all happened. And I have to say, in 27 years, I have never seen a situation where an official plan was put in place, a rezoning was sought and approved for a particular development, a development permit was sought and approved for a particular development, and then at the stage when a building permit would normally be applied for, and in this case, the only reason it hadn't been applied for yet is because the applicants had a good faith interest in continuing to listen and improve the design. At that stage, the city initiates a downzone process after an election. The implications of that are truly staggering, not only devastating for this particular property owner, but ripple effects in terms of the reputation, the credibility of the municipality as a good faith partner, as someone who doesn't change the rules at the 12th hour. And given how building permits are really expected to be the last technical review, this is really the 13th hour. This is a last-minute devastating change with implications for the applicant and the city. I'll pick up my comments in another 5-minute block shortly. Mr. Mayor and Council, I'll continue my comments from my last 5-minute increment. So I was speaking about the building permit process. It's really important to remember that building permits are a last technical review to make sure that the code has been complied with, and yes, the rules that were established in the rezoning and even in the policy are being adhered to. They are not a time, the building permit is not a time to reconsider or try to rewrite the rules that have been established in the development permit, in the rezoning, or in the official plan itself. We have to remember that significant decisions get made prior to the building permit stage, at the development permit stage or even before. Decisions to get financing or to grant financing from the banks, decisions to end or negotiate the end of a lease and start to vacate the property to prepare it for development. So reasonable decisions that were made based on reasonable steps taken by the city previously have led to a situation where the developer has taken ordinary decisions and are now in a very high-risk situation. That's the kind of situation that city halls try to avoid, because it doesn't just open you up to legal challenge. It opens you up to devastating reputational damage and credibility damage. It's like trying to change the rules of the game when the game is almost over. So the implications of that are significant, not just to the developer, to the applicant, but to City Hall and its reputation as a place to do reasonable, credible, consistent, and predictable business. That is my first observation. The second observation relates to the idea itself, the planning idea itself that's being proposed in the rezoning or downzoning to 6 stories. I looked at the urban design conditions and considerations of the existing approval, the 12-story thin tower existing approval, and the proposed 6-story alternative that is being proposed in the rezoning application. It's important to recognize that the actual approval of a very thin tower on a podium significantly set back represents, to some extent, a best practice in our region relative to how to do thin towers on a human-scaled podium. The tower thinness is actually a thinness that we haven't seen in this region for a long time. Other towers in White Rock, for example, other towers around the region, even in downtown Vancouver, have gotten significantly thicker in the last 10 years or so. So this 5,500 square foot tower thickness with a significant setback to allow for public views actually performs very well from an urban design perspective. It creates a human-scaled podium and a significant setback that actually widens the public view down to the water, which is one of the critical urban design elements. So I was very pleased to see that the existing tower approval is a thin tower, a setback tower on a human-scaled podium. So this is a very good development, a very good design initially. Having said that, I'll make some comments in a little while about how it can be and is proposed to be further improved. The second element of the analysis is about shadow casting. It's a bit counterintuitive to think this, but given where shadows are already cast, and given that the importance is where shadows get cast on streets and on intersections, for example, it's counterintuitive to understand that thinner, taller towers can perform much better than thicker, shorter towers from a shadow casting perspective. And that is the case here. The thin, taller tower actually casts shadows for a shorter period of time on the street. And so a thicker tower will cast just as much shadow, but it will cast it for a longer period of time. So the shadow casting is actually worse when you go to the thicker perimeter block kind of building. Lastly, neighborliness, the impact on the adjacent property owner, the Blue Frog particularly. The abruptness of the wall that will be created with a 6-story perimeter block building versus the stepped back and thin tower impacts of a taller, thinner building, I have no doubt, problem concluding that a thinner, taller tower will be more neighborly in terms of its impact on views, visual impact of a mass, etc., on the adjacent property owner. So from those 3 elements of urban design, public views down to the water, shadow casting, and impact on the adjacent property owner and neighborliness, I can easily conclude that the taller, thinner tower outperforms the thicker, wider, fatter, shorter tower. Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm back with my third installment of my comments to Council. Just one last thought to add about my urban design analysis, comparing the 12-story and 6-story options. I talked about the public view, the idea that a thicker perimeter block, shorter building will actually choke and constrain the view, compared to a taller, slimmer tower that is set back, actually widening the view. We actually quantified that through our architect's work and showed that there's about a 20% loss of the public view looking down the street. And that's really important because this perception of the water as you go down Johnston Road is one of the key public interest issues at play in this particular context. So it can be counterintuitive to think that a taller building can perform better, but a taller, slimmer, well-designed, set-back building can, and in this case does, perform better than a shorter, fatter perimeter block building that blocks views, casts more shadows, and is actually less neighborly to its adjacent neighbor in the case of Blue Frog. So I'll switch gears now to a thought about how this can proceed beyond the public hearing tonight. And here's the problem. Here's the paint that we've used to paint ourselves into a corner, I think, everyone in this particular case. One of the reasons that this property owner didn't submit a building permit earlier, when in fact probably strategically they should have, and legally they would have been better off doing so, is because they had a good faith interest in continuing to evolve the design. And in fact, my understanding is that you're going to be shown, or have already been shown, an improved design that I've had a chance to review and in some cases influence. And I want to speak to that in my final 5 minutes here. Everything I've talked about in terms of the urban design performance of the taller building, this new design, the architectural language of it, the change in scale to the podium, to a 3-story podium with a setback 4th story, and the removal of the architectural embellishments at the top and at the podium that actually would block part of the public view down to the water. All of those are improvements that I think significantly improve the proposal and its implications to the public interest urban design issues that I've talked about. So it is my hope, it is my recommendation that Council find ways to proceed with that revised design, because it's better. It's better from multiple perspectives. It's an improvement over the previously approved design. Here's the problem. Because we're on a kind of a fast track towards a legal challenge, if Council approves the downzoning in this public hearing or soon after, there's no opportunity to continue to work on that revised design and perhaps even further improve it. Because now you're in court, and court is a place where there's no design review conversation. It's a black and white binary choice at that point. Does the developer have the right to build the previously approved design, or does the city have the right to limit development to 6 stories? The problem with that binary choice, it's a no-win situation for everyone. The developer, and I believe the community in terms of who we've talked to, would prefer that a better design actually go forward on the site, but the courts won't be able to insist on or apply a better design. On the other hand, if the city wins in court and the rules change to a 6-story, the developer has made it clear that they cannot financially proceed. So we end up with a situation where the site has been vacated and probably may remain vacant until conditions change somehow, economic conditions, political conditions, or what have you. So my concern in terms of the public interest is we're on a collision course to a worst case scenario here. The only way we stop the collision course is for Council to stop this rezoning and OCP process, and rather negotiate with the developer, who has shown good faith, even in the context of some bad faith on the part of the city, has shown good faith, willingness, and interest in actually improving the design moving forward. And the result would be a new DP with the better design that the applicant has shared, I believe, at public hearing today, or tonight. So I urge Council to stop this process. It's a game of chicken where there's a no-win situation no matter where you look in this context. My interest in the public interest is to find a way to end up with a better outcome for everyone, but this current path cannot get us there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for allowing me to present in this incremental way, and I wish you good luck with your decision.